Basra. Okay, Tet Yud. If a house collapsed upon a man and his mother, all agree that they divide. Rabbi Kiva says, I agree in this case that possessions retain their status. Ben Azai said to him, on the disputed issues we are pained, and you come to dispute the unanimous. An open document that has witnesses on the inside and a bound document that has its witnesses on the outside. An open one whose witnesses wrote on the outside and a bound one whose witnesses wrote on the inside, both are invalid. Rabbi Kanina ben Gamil says a bound one whose witnesses wrote on the inside is valid because he can make it an open one. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamil says all in accord with the custom of the land. An open document requires two witnesses and a bound one, three. An open one in which one witness is signed and a bound one in which two witnesses are signed are both invalid. If he wrote in it 100 zuzin, which are 20 sellers, he receives only 20 sellers. And if he wrote 100 zuzin, which are the 30 sellers, he receives only a mana. If it stated silver zuzin, which are, and the rest was erased, and it is not less than two zuzin, two zuzin. Silver sellers, which are, and the rest were erased, it is not less than two sellers. Darkens, which are, and the rest was erased, it is not less than two darkens. If above was written 100 zuzin and below 200 zuzin, or above 200 and below 100, everything follows the bottom statement. If so, why is the top written? So that if one letter from the bottom should be erased, it will be derived from the top.
Okay. Now, instructions for the sofer. So a sofer is allowed to write on demand a get for a man, even though his wife isn't present. Why is that? Because in the times of the Mishna, a man is allowed to divorce his wife without her consent. It was only much later, 1,000 years later, that Rabbeinu Gershom came and made his cherem that a woman has to be divorced with her consent. Okay, and similarly, if a woman wants to write out the receipt that she's received a kasubah, he's allowed to write out the shovar so that she can hold it in her hand and she's ready to give it to her husband once she receives the cash.
Did most people at this time, especially women, have the ability to write? The time of the Mishnah?
I don't know. I mean, I want to say that the Jewish people have always had an extraordinarily high literacy rate, but I don't know if that extended to the women because if women weren't learning Torah, did they need to read as much? I think we have to presume that they could read. That it was still an exceptional thing that if a woman couldn't read.
No, she could read, but maybe she couldn't write. That would be another question. I don't know. All right,
I'm not even sure why you would need why you'd need a sofer to write a shovar, because the shovar is not a ritual document. It's just like I hereby admit you could scroll it on a post-it note and that's that's done.
Right.
Anyway.
The way people sign signatures here, it's like just a scribble. So it's just.
But the sofer nonetheless has to recognize the husband and the wife in both of these situations. He's got to know them, that he's putting that he's putting their names in and he's not just putting in a tokes for somebody else who's and particularly for the get. He's doing it for this particular person because the get has got to be written lishma. And the husband is the one who has to pay the fee, because it's we learn this out from pasuk. The cost of la sefer Christos, he has to write it out, and therefore he has to pay it because it's got to be for him that it's written. Because the sefer gerushin is got to be written out for the husband to give to the wife. Okay. Now moving off divorce, we're now moving into loans. Right, the borrower, the guy who needs the money, you can write out the shtar for him because he's going to be receiving the money, and when he receives it, he'll hand it over to the lender. Okay, and that's okay. but you can't write it out for the lender unless the borrower is with him and he consents, because you don't want to start creating a star that maybe he's going to get fake witnesses and whatever. So at least the software who's writing it out should know that it's going through legit channels. But and who's expected to pay the software is the borrower, because he's the guy who's getting the benefit of the money. So he has to pay the notary or whatever, the software, in order to get this done. Okay. So when a seller is selling some property, and the buyer's not with him, so he's allowed to do that because the property is in his hands. And when he sells the property, the star is going to go with the property. So that's the legit channel. But in course, actually, and again, for the same reason, you can't say give it to a buyer and say, yeah, this is the star that proves that I'm going to be the owner of this field. I mean, it still obviously has to have witnesses, but you're removing some friction from him if he wants to cheat and get some fake witnesses. Okay, and here the buyer pays for the star, because he's the guy who's getting the benefit of having landed property. Yeah. Ein kosvin stari erisin benisuin elamidas shnehem. You're not allowed now that up until now the software has had freedom to write staros for people, even if only one person is there, who's the one who's going to be selling something. But when it comes to erisin and nisuin, it has to be midas shnehem. Both of them have got to have consent. And the chassan is the one who has to pay. And similarly, when you have somebody who takes on sharecropping, or he takes on a kablanos, he's going to farm the field for a flat fee. Both the landowner and the worker have got to be present, or at least have got to show their consent in some way to the software before you can write the star. The Makabel no sense car, and the Aris, he's the guy who's going to have to pay, because he's the one who's getting the benefit of having the landed property. So even though the other guy is also getting benefit of having somebody working his property, it seems like we consider the gain is more for the guy who doesn't own the property, who's coming to find somewhere to work, whereas the owner of the field could find anyone to come and get his work on his field. Okay, and kosvin shtarit berin v'chol maaseh based in elamidas shnehem, and any kind of shtar based in. So berin is when two guys come to court, and this is something that we still do nowadays, is that we make people sign, we make the litigants sign a shtar berin that makes the court binding, that makes the court rulings binding, that acknowledges that whatever they say, we're going to abide by it. Okay, so all of those things, that anything else that's a maaseh based in, has to be done with dashneim. So both the litigants have to sign it. And they've got to share the costs of that, because when you've got two litigants, you can't say this one's getting more or less benefit. They're both litigants, and the case could benefit either one of them, so therefore they share in the cost. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer shneim kostim shnayim lazeh atzmo v'lazeh atzmo. So when you've got litigants, they both write two shtaros. They both sign on two shtaros, and each one keeps his own copy.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. However, the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel here. The court keeps the copy of the shtar bearer. Okay. Mishe para miktsas chovo. So here you've got a situation where you've got a borrower and a lender. Let's say Reuven lent to Shimon. He lent him 1,000 shekels, and now Shimon has got together some of the cash, and he paid back 500. Okay, and now he's got the hishlish is shtaro, and he wants to put his the lender wants to put his shtar into the hands of a tzad gimel of a third party, because he doesn't want to write out another shtar to say, okay, I've received 500. Instead, what he says is, listen, take look after the shtar. Like he gives it to Levi, and Levi and says, Levi, listen, he's paid me 500, so you look after the shtar. If he hasn't, if I haven't, so says Levi, if I haven't paid him within the remaining 500 up to whatever date, take no shtar up and give him the shtar back. Okay, so Levi is now taking on a bit of risk over here because he thinks he's going to be able to pay by such and such a date. But what if something goes wrong? Then Levi's going to give the shtar back to Reuven, and Reuven can come to Beis Din and claim the whole 1,000 from him, which means he'll end up paying 1,500 if Reuven is going to be unscrupulous about it. Now, what happens if this taka happens that Levi hasn't paid? The Shimon hasn't paid, and Levi says, "Well, can I give the shtar back to Reuven? Maybe Reuven's going to claim too much." Rabbi Yossi Omer Yitain. Rabbi Yossi says, "Fine, that's what he said. Let him give it back." And he's saying that he trusts Reuven not to claim back more than he's really due. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Lo Yitain, and Rabbi Yehuda says you can't give it back. Why? Because when Levi said it, it's called it's called an asmachta. When somebody is overly confident and that it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. I'm gonna get the money back, so I'm not really worried about it. And then when it really does happen, no, I didn't really mean it. He didn't really think that it was going to happen. That it was that he was going to lose that money. So, by the way, asmachta is the same term that we use when we say why people shouldn't gamble, why people shouldn't bet against each other, because when people place bets, they don't really believe that they're going to lose. They think they're going to win. So it's not really al das. It's called gezel drabanan when people place bets against each other and take each other's money because they really think they're going to win.
Just look at Las Vegas or something. They won't think they're going to win.
Yeah. Okay. And halacha here it follows Rabbi Yehuda that the escrow party cannot give it back. He has to give the lend. He says I'm not giving it back until the lender. I'm not doing anything with it until the borrower pays back the amount in full. Okay.
All right. We are on
Zayin Aleph.
I always think it's a killer Hashem when these people go to Las Vegas, like these from people, Brady people, and their sisters are flying in the air and they're throwing the dice and
Yeah. Have you been to Las Vegas and seen that?
That was a long time ago. It has to be 40 years or something like that. Made a trip to California and Las Vegas. I just lost my tissue. I took it out before.
Okay, we're in Zayin Aleph.
Okay. There we go. Okay. If one said to another, I am selling you a base core of earth, and it contained crevices 10 hand breadths deep and rocks 10 hand breadths high, they are not measured with it. If they were less than this, they are measured with it. If he said to him, I am selling you like a base core of earth, even if it contained crevices deeper than 10 hand breadth and rocks higher than 10 hand breadth, they are measured with it. If one said to another, I am selling you a base core of earth as measured by a rope, and he gave him even the slightest amount less, he must deduct. If he gave him even the slightest amount more, he must give back. If he said whether less or more, even if he gave a quarter kav less per sar and a quarter kav less per sar, it becomes his. If it was more than this, he should make a reckoning. And what does he give back? Money. But if the seller prefers, he gives him back the land. And why did he say that he gives back money? To improve the position of the seller, so that if there remained an area of 9 kavs in the field, or half a kav in the garden, or a quarter kav according to Rabbi Akiva, he may give him back the land. And moreover, it is not only the quarter kav that he gives back, but all of the excess. If he said, I am selling you as measured by a rope, be it less or more, the condition be less or more negates the condition of measured of as measured by a rope. If he said, be it less or more as measured by a rope, the condition as measured by a rope negates the condition, be it less or more, and these are the words of Benandus. If he described it by its marks and boundaries, if the difference is less than a sixth, he must accept it, but anything down to a sixth, he deducts.
Okay.
A person may stipulate for himself, for his son and daughter who are of age, for his male slave and female slave who are of age, and for his wife, because they have understanding. But he may not stipulate for his son and daughter who are minors, not for his male slave or female slave who are minors, nor for his animals, since they have no understanding. One who hires laborers to work in his revived plantings, they may not eat. If he did not notify them, he must redeem the fruit and give them to eat. If his fig plate separated or his cask open, they may not eat. If he did not notify them, he may tithe the fruits and give them to eat. Shomer and produce may eat by virtue of common custom, but not by virtue of biblical law. There are 4 types of shomer: an unpaid shomer, a borrower, a paid shomer, and a renter. The unpaid shomer swears for everything, a borrower pays for everything. A paid shomer and a renter swears concerning an animal that broke a limb, and an animal that was captured, and an animal that died, and they pay for loss or theft and theft. One wolf is
that's
not.
it. We've done 3.
Get it.
Sota.
Okay, I'll do getting after. All right. Yeah. Okay. Test Jude Gimel. Red Shimon ben Elazar says the cessation of tahara caused the loss of flavor or an aroma, and the cessation of tithe caused the loss of the richness of the grain. And the sages say promiscuity and sorcery brought an end to all. During the siege of Vespasian, they decreed a ban on bridegrooms' crowns and on the tambourine. During the siege of Titus, they decreed a ban on brides' crowns and that a man may not teach his son Greek. During the final siege, they decreed that a bride not go out into the city under a canopy, but our rabbis permitted the bride to go out into the city under a canopy. When Meir died, the composers of parables disappeared from the world, and when Ben Azai died, the diligent ones disappeared. When Ben Zoma died, I can't ever say this. Go ahead, say it. What is it?
When Ben Zoma died, Batlu had Darshanim, those who Darshanim are the ones who what's the word for darshan in English? The people who darshan, people who learn how to.
All right, okay.
Exegesis, is that it? Exegesis.
That's funny because I said I couldn't say the word, so you say it, and you said it in Hebrew, so that didn't help at all.
EXEGESIS, exegesis, or something like that.
EXEGETES.
That's right. Exegeses. Right, the ones. Right, that's a darshan. That's why the Hebrew word is easier than the English.
They disappeared. When Rabbi Shua died, goodness ceased from the world. When Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel died, the locusts came and troubles increased. When Ben Elazar ben Azariah died, wealth increased from among the sages. When Rabbi Akiva died, the glory of the Torah disappeared. When Hanina ben Dosa died, men of the great deeds disappeared. And when Yossi ben the Lesser died, pious ones ceased. And why was he called the Lesser? Because he was the least of the pious ones. When Rabbi Zochanan ben Zakkai died, the splendor of wisdom disappeared. When Rabbi Gamliel the elder died, the glory of the Torah disappeared, and purity and abstention died. When Rabbi Ishmael ben Pavi died, the splendor of the kahuna disappeared, and when Rabbi Yehuda ben Nasi died, humility and fear of the sin disappeared. When Pinchas ben Yair died, Ben Yair says, with the destruction of the temple, scholars and highborn men became ashamed, and their faces have been hidden, and men of merit have been impoverished. Strong-armed men and slanderers have become powerful, and there is no one to investigate, seek, or inquire. Well, on whom can we rely? Only on our Father in heaven. Rabbi Elazar the Great says, from the day that the temple was destroyed, scholars became like school teachers, and school teachers like synagogue attendants, and synagogue attendants like common people, and the common people continued to degenerate, and no one speaks to halt this. On whom can we rely? Only on our Father in heaven. With the footsteps of the Messiah, insolence will increase and inflation will soar. The vine will give its fruit, but wine will be dear. And the government will turn to heresy, and there will be no rebuke. The meeting place of sages will be used for immorality, and the Galil will be destroyed, and the Galvin desolated, and the border dwellers will wander from city to city, but will not be pitied. The knowledge of scholars will be lost. Those who fear sin will be despised, and the truth will be hidden. And youths will be shamed old men, and old men will stand up for youngsters. There will be a time when a son shames his father, a daughter rebels against a mother, a daughter-in-law against a mother-in-law, and a man's enemies are the members of his household. On the face of the generation will be like the face of the dog, and the son is not ashamed before his father. On whom can we rely? Only on our Father in heaven. And Pinchas Yair says, alacrity brings to cleanliness, cleanliness brings to purity, purity brings to abstention, abstention brings to holiness, holiness brings to humility, humility brings to fear of sin brings to saintliness, saintliness brings to divine inspiration, divine inspiration brings to the restoration of the dead, and the restoration of the dead will be brought by Eliyahu, who is remembered for good. Amen.
Amen. And one Mishnah from Gittin.
One who brings a get from overseas must state it was written in my presence and signed in my presence. Gamil says Oni, also one who brings it from the Rechem or from Keger. Rabbi Elias says even from Kefar Ludim to Lud, the sages, however, say one is not required to state it was written by my presence and signed in my presence unless he bringing it from overseas or taking it overseas. And one who brings a get from a province into province overseas must say it was written in my presence and signed in my presence. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamil says even from rulership to rulership.
Okay.
In Yoma. Okay. One who sees the Kohen Gadol when he reads cannot see the ox, and the he-goat as they are burned. And one who sees the ox and the he-goat as they are burned cannot see the Kohen Gadol when he reads, not because he may not, but because the distance between them were great. Both services performed at the same time. If he read the Torah in the linen vestments and he did wash his hands and feet, undressed, went down into the mikveh and immersed himself, he came up and dried himself. They brought him the golden vestments. He dressed and washed his hands and feet. Then he went out and sacrificed his ram, and the ram of the people, and the ram unblemished male sheep in the first year. This is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Kiva says they were brought with a daily morning offering, as well as the ox for a burnt offering, and the he-goat, which is done outside, were brought with a daily afternoon offering. He washed his hands and feet, undressed, went down into the mikveh and immersed himself, and came up and dried himself. They brought him white linen vestments. He dressed and washed his hands and feet. He entered the holies of holies to remove the ladle and the shovel. He washed his hands and feet, undressed, went down, immersed himself, came up from the mikveh and dried himself. They brought him golden vestments. He dressed, washed his hands and feet, entered the holy to burn the afternoon incense and light the lamps, and then he washed his hands and feet and undressed. They brought him personal clothing, and he dressed, and they accompanied him to his house, and he made a feast for his friends for having left the temple safely. The Kohen Gadol serves in eight vestments, and the common Kohen Gadol in four, in a tunic, pants, hat, and belt. In addition to these, the Kohen Gadol wore a breastplate, an ephod, and a cloak, and a golden plate. Wearing these eight vestments, they are considered for the decision of the Tumen, and they are not considered except for a king, the court, and for someone who the public needs. One who eats the vayim of a large date.
Hold on. No, wait. I think you skipped a page because I was in the middle of Mishnah Dalet, then I lost where you were, and then suddenly you finished Mishnah Hey. He went down and he toiled, and they brought him the gold vestments and
golden plate. Let me see, golden plate. I mean, these pages stick together, so maybe I did golden plate, and that's right. And then it says, wearing these eight vestments, they are consulted.
No, the eight vestments are already in Mishnah Hey.
Yes, and then the last part of it is, wearing these eight vestments, they are consulted for the decision of the Urim to Tumim. They're not consulted except for a king, a court, and for.
But that's in Mishnah Hey already.
That's part of this Mishnah Hey. Am I?
Yeah, but we were in Dalet, and the last one is today is Dalet. Did you get to the part where he went home and made and they made a Yom Tov for his friends at the time when he came out?
Yeah, I said they accompanied him to his house and made a feast, right?
Right. Okay. So then I wasn't concentrating. Okay. Emes Maneder Haya Kohen Gadol. Okay. Let's go on to Uktzin.
Okay. So where did we start? We stopped at We stopped at hay.
Yeah,
No,
so tomorrow we start with hay.
we start with hay tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I went too far ahead.
Okay. Well, same base with Zion.
Let's get going here. Okay. Okay, Zion. The green leaves and greens combine, but the white leaves are not combined. We have Elazar, the son Sadik says the white leaves combine in the case of karabi, and they are because they are food. In the case of lettuce, they protect the food. Regarding the leaves of onions and the stalks of onions, if they contain a sap, they are measured as they are. But if they contain a hollow, one must compress the hollow. Sponge bread is measured as it is, and if it contains a hollow, one must compress the hollow. Regarding the meat of a calf that swelled and the meat of an old animal that shrank, they are measured as they are. Regarding a cucumber that one planted in a flower pot and it grew and extended over the flower pot, out of the flower pot, it is tahor. Rabbi Shimon said, what is the basis for purifying it? Rather, the tamei portion remains with its tumah, and the tahor portion may be eaten.
Okay.
And the last thing is me'ilah. Okay, Gimel Aleph. The offspring of Akatos, the Tamora of Akatos, and Akatos whose owners have died are left to die. Regarding Akatos whose year has passed and one was lost and then found blemished, if after the owners have atoned for their sin, it is left to die and it does not make a Tamura. And it is forbidden for benefit, but is not subject to Me'ilah. But if before the owners have atoned for their sin, if it left to graze until it develops a blemish and then it is sold, and the owner purchased another Katos with the proceeds, and the original Katos makes the Tamura, it is subject to Me'ilah. Regarding one who sets aside money for, excuse me, his near Xeris, and the money is not permitted, for benefit, it is not subject to Me'ilah, since all the money is fit to be brought as a shlomen. If the Nazir died and the money was unspecified, it falls into the fund for voluntary offerings. And if the money was specified, the money designated for the katos should go to the Dead Sea, and the money is not permitted to benefit, but it is not subject to Me'ilah. With the money designated for the Olah, they should bring an Olah. And with the money designated for the Shlomen, they should bring a Shlomen. And the Shlomen may be eaten in one day and does not require the accompanying bread. Rabbi Ishmael says the sacrificial of blood is lenient in the beginning and stringent in the end, and the libations are stringent in the beginning and lenient in the end. The blood in the beginning is not subject to Me'ilah, but once it left the courtyards of the Kidron Valley, it is subject to Me'ilah. Libations in the beginning are subject to Me'ilah, but once they have gone down to the Shishin, they are not subject to Me'ilah.
And that's it.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Okay. Freilich and Chanukah.
Yes.